Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz from Sassy's LLC and I am so excited to be sharing a double project with you today. I have a coordinating card and envelope, and the star of the show are these vintage ornaments. I love these. I love them so much. So I'm going to kind of show you how I went about stenciling and die cutting and doing all the layers for my ornaments. I did it knowing that I was going to make lots of ornaments, but certainly I will show you an alternative to help you if you only want to make like one set of ornaments that's maybe a little less time consuming. For each ornament, I'm trying to get a gradient of color, darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. So for the first ornament, I masked it off, but I didn't want to go through that much tape. And so for the rest of them, I cut a 2.5-inch circle out of a piece of cardstock, and I'm just using that to isolate the ornament that I'm working on and to protect the other ones, because I've done this a few times now and I am not a careful stenciler. So I know if I don't mask things off, I'm gonna have a problem. So now that I have the base of each of my ornaments done, I'm gonna bring in this second stencil, and it has tons and tons of options. There's different ways you can decorate them and different layers that you can add. For most of them, I'm gonna do 3 layers. I had that teal ink, and then I have some spun sugar distress oxide. I love that I can layer this lighter color right over that blue ink, and I get some opacity from that. And then I'm going to use a paste. But on a couple of them, like the first one, I really needed 4 layers, and so I also am going to bring in a little bit of purple ink on 2 of them, the one in the top right corner and then the one in the bottom left right here. There are just so many incredible options with this stencil. It's so good, you guys. The thing is too, you wouldn't have to stencil the base layers of the ornaments. You could just cut them out of some colored cardstock and start with that, and then use this stencil to add the different layers on top of colored cardstock, and that would save you a few steps and a little bit of time. So I have put down all of my spun sugar and a little bit of that purple ink, and now I'm going to cut them out before I add my paste. All right. I love that these dies cut clear up to the edge. You are not going to get a white border around the ornaments, and they're pretty easy to line up. If you're worried about getting a white border or getting them off center, you could certainly make yourself a little mask, like cut the die out of some just printer paper and use that to help line them up. But I found that this was not hard at all. Because I know I'm making lots of ornaments, I am making a jig right now. I have a 6x9-inch piece of cardstock, the same size as my stencil, and I am filling in the places where I know that's the layer I want to add using some Lunar paste. Then I'm going to line up my dies to cut those pieces out, and it's going to create like a template for me, a jig. I can't actually fit all 6. I can get 5 of the 6, and that's pretty good. It will help me keep cleanup to a minimum. Once I get those cut out, I've added it to a sticky mat, and then I will fit my little ornaments in like puzzle pieces, and I can just lay the stencil right on top of that white piece of cardstock, and I know that it will line up perfectly with where I want to add the paste on those ornaments. And I know I'm also not going to get paste all over my sticky mat, and then I'm bad at cleaning sticky mats, you guys. So like that felt like a huge win too. I'm using a palette knife to very carefully add some Lunar paste through each section of the stencil. It doesn't take much, and then I will just sort of scrape it gently across the top to even it out and move along pretty quickly. I didn't need to mask much off here either. Once I'm done, I will set my stencil aside, and then I can peel off this jig that I made, my little template, and I'm trying to keep each of my ornaments stuck to the sticky mat. So I'll just use my pokey tool to help with that. There are just a few places where the Lunar paste extends from the ornament onto that template, and I want to make sure that it's not going to dry as a solid piece. So that's why I pulled that off while the paste was still wet. If you didn't want to make a jig, this is another way to go about adding your paste. Again, I highly recommend cutting out the ornaments first, and then you can just kind of tape them to the back of your stencil and then peel them off when you're done. It's not super hard. You have to be careful, particularly with this one. And then there's another that has like a little dangly piece. It's very delicate, so just be careful removing those. I have used my Modern Embossed A2 rectangle to cut out a white panel for my card. And then I'm going to bring in some greenery to go with my ornaments. This is the Holiday Candle and Botanical. It is beautiful. You can make this wreath. You can create the word joy with the wreath in the middle. One of our creative team members stuck one of the ornaments in the middle of the joy, and it's so, so pretty. You can see that on the Trinity Stamps website, so I'll be sure to link to that below. And then I'm using the Simply Sentimental Mary dies. This new scripty font is gorgeous. I love it so much. I think I want my Mary at the bottom, and I'm just going to do a simple Merry Christmas. So this is the Simply Sentimental Mary stamp set. I'm just getting the lay of the land here and trying to figure out where everything's going to go before I start stamping and gluing things down. I know I want a little string to connect my ornaments to the garland that's going along the top. So I'm using a pencil to mark the tops of the ornaments and then right at the garland kind of where they'll connect. Then it's really easy to bring in my T-square ruler just to make sure I get my line straight, and I will connect the dot at the garland to the dot that was at the top of the ornament. And I'm just using a Uni-Ball silver pen, but really kind of any fancy pen would work here and look beautiful. Then I'm putting everything in my MISTI. I haven't glued anything down yet. I'm just getting placement again. And I'm going to stamp Christmas at the bottom where it's going to nestle right underneath the Mary and butt up against the Y of it. I love it when fonts kind of fit in like puzzle pieces like this. I've stamped it with some black pigment ink, and then I'll use some clear heat embossing powder to make that kind of glossy. The Mary is cut out of some Trinity Stamps glossy black cardstock, and so I like the way that those coordinate nicely together. When I go to glue everything down, I decided that I needed a little more variation in color. So I cut 2 pieces of this greenery from a lime-ish green. It's sort of a muted lime green. And then the other pieces are from that deep teal that is the same as my card base. So on each side of my swag, I'm putting that lime green piece in the center on the bottom layer, and then I will layer up the other 2 kind of overlapping that. It creates a little more fullness. And again, just I liked that little hint of brightness peeking through from behind. To add the rest of my greeting, I'm adding little dots of glue to the back of my Mary die cut, and then I just tap that off on the back of my hand. I do this a lot when I'm worried that the glue is going to ooze out. I don't want to be able to see that. Maybe I'm just picky, but then it's easy enough to lay my greeting down right where I want it. I do have a tiny little bit of wiggle room, and because there's not an overabundance of glue, you can't really see if it wiggles just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add my ornaments down with some wet glue, and then there's little toppers for each of those ornaments, and they lay mostly on top of the ornament itself, which is really, really nice. And because I was really careful with my strings, I know that everything's going to line up nice and straight, and it's going to look like my little ornaments are hanging from the garland above it. We are nearly done with our card. I've added just a little bit of thin foam to the back, and then I'll add some wet glue because this is the single hardest part for me. I am really struggling with it lately, trying to get panels centered on my cards. I get there in the end because I am not a quitter. But I tell you what, some of them lately have really been a challenge. Then I'll add that onto an A2 top folding card base. I flip it over just to add a little bit of pressure, and that will finish up our first part of our project. For the second part of our project, we are going to make a coordinating envelope, and I think I love the envelope even more than the card. This is the A2 envelope builder die set, and it has all these postage stamp dies, and there's a little like debossed detail on there. It cuts out the base of the envelope, the little side pieces, side flaps. There's a bunch of word dies. This is so great. There's also a liner that you can add to the inside of the envelope to really dress it up. There's a score line at the bottom, but then not at the top, right? Otherwise, there wasn't room to fit the liner die in there. So I'm gonna fold that bottom flap, stick it in my scoring tool, and score it 4.5 inches. It's super, super simple to add that, and I'll just use my bone folder to smooth that out. We'll use our 3 remaining ornaments on this, along with the Simply Sentimental Christmas in that same scripty font, and the Do Not Open Till stamp from the coordinating stamp set. And I'm gonna line those up right along the bottom. I'm just getting the lay of the land before I add a little bit of extra something to this envelope. I'm gonna come around the outside edges with some really dark teal ink. Then I'll bring in a little bit of black soot as well, just to create a little bit of drama, keep the middle nice and bright. I love this die set. I don't know about you guys, but in my family, we keep gift bags. Like if you give someone a gift for their birthday or for Christmas, they throw out the tissue paper, but we reuse the bag. And that means we get to keep all the really good ones. But I don't give that many gifts anymore. By the way, I am just splattering some spun sugar and a little bit of shimmer paint onto my background, and then I will heat set that and make sure everything's really, really dry. Okay, so my kids love to give gift cards, right? So they'll give a gift card to their cousins that's good for one sleepover, or they'll give one to their grandparents that's also good for one sleepover at their house, which is brilliant. I think I was really proud of myself for that one. But this is like the handmade gift bag that gift goes in, and it will get reused over and over and over in my family. And I'm using some really heavyweight cardstock, and it's gonna last a long time. And it makes me wanna put all my time and energy into it. I am making tons of these envelopes for Christmas. So I hope you like this die set. I just think it's brilliant. I love it so, so much. Okay, while I was gushing, inside the flap of my envelope, I used the Insider Sentiments to stamp "Wishing you all the happiness your holiday can hold," which I thought was really clever because it's an envelope and it holds things. And I heat embossed that with some silver embossing powder. And then on the front of my envelope, I used my Christmas die cut to line up the Do Not Open Till to make sure I got that placement just right. And I will heat emboss that in the same silver embossing powder. Now we're going to assemble the envelope. There are these 2 flaps that go on the side, and I have added 1/4 inch rip and stick tape to those flaps. It fits on there perfectly. I'm also going to add just a little bit of glue to make sure I line everything up right and I get a little bit of wiggle room. I open it up and I line up the score line with the edge of the envelope, right? Instead of trying to do it with the flap closed. So I'm going to show this to you again. I'm going to remove that release paper. I'm going to add a little bit of glue. And I am just eyeballing, right, the score line on my flap, and then it's going to butt right up against those other 2 score lines on the base of the envelope. So there's not really a lot of guessing. This is really easy to put together. I've got a little bit of float time because of that wet glue, and then you can see how it all folds up. To make sure I get glue only where I want it, I just use a pencil to kind of mark just inside the curve of that flap. And then I'll add my wet glue, but I'm being careful not to go too close to the flap. I don't want it oozing into the middle of the envelope and then everything is glued shut. And I'll add just a little extra line of glue right around the top edges of the flap that's folding up. Now I can start decorating the rest of the front of my card. I'm going to do my little pencil trick again to mark the tops of my ornaments, but this one's even easier because I don't need it to end at the garland. So I will bring in my T-square ruler and I will realize after this first one, this is easier to do the other way around, and I will just carry the line right off the edge of the envelope. Even this first one that I didn't get perfectly the first time, not a big deal. I'll just go right back over it, and then that will give me little strings for all 3 of my ornaments. Then I'm adding little dots of glue to that Christmas die cut. I know it's super delicate, but this font is gorgeous. It's so worth it. It's worth it. I'll tap off the excess glue on the back of my hand, and these are going to nestle together again. So the Do Not Open Till overlaps a little bit the beginning of the C of Christmas, and I just love that. Then I have my ornaments, and I'll start adding those with some wet glue as well. Because this is an envelope that I anticipate being in my family for a long time, I am being really careful to get to the edges to make sure that things are secured down really well. This will go through the hands of children. and I don't trust them. So yeah, I just want to make sure everything's nice and secure, maybe even more so than a card. I would love to think people keep my cards forever, but I know that's not really the case. So yeah, so this is something I'm really, really excited about. I'm just going to trim off the extra from that one ornament on the right, and then it nestles beautifully, perfectly right here at the bottom. And I love how it then looks like this scene of dangling ornaments is extending off to either side. I don't need an extra string because I don't have the center of the ornament on there. So I will just add my 3 little toppers to my ornaments to kind of finish that piece off. I want this envelope to be easy to open and close. And so one of my favorite ways to do this, short of adding a magnet, which I'm not above, is with some 3/8 inch Velcro dots. And I just put both of the Velcro pieces together. And so I have both sticky sides exposed here. I'll put it where I want it on the flap and then fold it closed onto the envelope so I get my placement just perfect. Now my envelope will stay shut when I want it, but it's easy to open and easy to reuse. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I would love to know which is your favorite, the card or the envelope. Leave me a comment and let me know if you guys save gift bags in your house. Please give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the Trinity channel so you don't miss out on more inspiration.